All right, my name's PY. I'm an Android engineer at Square. I work mostly on Square APIs, so if you ever need to deal with payments in your apps, you can think about Square now. We also do that. But that's not the topic of this talk. So today, I want to talk about tech talks. And more specifically, the reason I'm doing this talk is because at Square, we have internal tech talks, and I've been helping organizing those for about a year and a half now. So it's monthly, and every month I get to see about 5 speakers and help them prepare for those talks. And so I gave a lot of feedback, and I realized that I was pretty much always giving the same feedback. And so I decided to turn that into a talk. You might recognize John over here if you're familiar with the Android community. Our internal tech talks are great. We have a good time. So this is what the talk's about. Today we're going to learn about some of the very simple principles that you can apply when you're creating a tech talk. I'm not going to focus on the acting part of it, on like how to present and like do big hand gestures and all that, because I'm not really good at it anyway. But I'm going to try to help you prepare a tech talk. So the first thing I want to say is that there isn't one way to create a talk. In fact, everybody's different. And so it's very important that if I give you advice or if I say, this is terrible, you should feel comfortable disagreeing with me and doing something completely different. So to highlight that, who has seen the talk from, coming back, the Google I/O talk. So Jake and Christina gave a great tech talk about Kotlin this year. Who's seen that talk? Yeah, pretty much everybody. That's great. This is not. I'm not gonna say like, oh no, this was great or this was bad. No, they were both really great. No feedback, no criticizing. That's not the point. The point is, if you watch the talk, you probably noticed that they both have a very different style, both in terms of the content, like what the subject of the talk was. It was Kotlin, but very different. The way the slides were made, but also the way they were presenting on stage. Yet there were 2 very different approaches. Yet there were they were both great. So that really shows that it doesn't matter. You can have your own presenting style. And so my goal is that with this talk is to get more people to be on stage at Google I/O over time. Maybe you'll be there next year or in a couple years. So the focus is really on preparing a talk. So let's prepare an imaginary talk, right? Let's say that maybe you have to speak at a conference. So how do you start? So we're going to go through an example. So maybe we start with coming up with an imaginary title, with a clear title, I meant, for an imaginary talk. Let's say using JSR 269 for JSR 330. That's a pretty clear title. Now we need to add a background to make the slide fancy. We should probably add the footer provided by the conference and maybe a company footer, copyright notice from like 2 years ago or 10 years ago. We might want to put the date of today, but we made the slides a year ago, so it's not up to date. Of course, that's our intro slide. It's pretty nice. Then the next most important slide is the copyright slide to make sure everybody here is like, not creating problems for your company. But the really, really important next slide is the author slide, where you tell the people, more details about you, like your entire life and your entire resume and everything you've done in life. You should not forget to add a LinkedIn link, because you might get a job after this talk. So it's very important to put your LinkedIn resume. Let's talk a bit about content, right? So the content slide, maybe you want to start with an important statement, like developers are struggling with new set of requirements. Ask a question. Why is mobile different? And then you've heard that advice that you should try to not have too many slides, right? So how do you do that? Well, it's easy. You just have to put more content on one slide. So that's pretty nice. But you'll notice one thing, right? There's room over there. It's not working. It's working. Yeah. So we have content on the right as well. And if you're bright and clever, you probably noticed that there is still some space left. So now We have a really good slide. Okay, try to memorize that slide. It's very important. All right, we're having fun. No one would ever make such a slide. So I want to tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I was at Devox Friends in 2012. It was the keynote, 9 a.m., 700 developers in the room, Java developers. So they all woke up early, 9 a.m., and came to the room to see a talk. And here is a picture of the slide. Let's look at it. Does that ring a bell? Right. So I actually went and retyped every single one of these things to create my example. Now, this was a real slide, and you might think, oh my God, it must have been terrible for the audience. Well, it turns out it was terrible for the speaker, and here's why. 2012, tweet walls were like hot back then. So in the giant room, there was a tweet wall that was, or maybe two, that were like ahead of the speakers and not filtered, just like using the hashtag. So as the speaker was going through, people started tweeting like, zzz, like I'm falling asleep, it's terrible, that kind of stuff. And the speaker did not realize, but the room started laughing randomly as there was speaking. It's like the worst situation you could ever be in. It's like a nightmare. So we don't want that to happen to us, right? I mean, aside from no tweet walls, like ban any sort of tweet wall ever, or at least filter them out. They actually pretended that there was an accident and that it had to be turned off because it wasn't working anymore or something. But let's go back to the slide deck and look into some of the details. So this provides no value whatsoever to the audience, right? We don't care about any of that stuff. So it should just not be there. It's distracting. It's kind of obvious, but always a good thing to remember. This title is very great. Yeah, it's not clear. Like, what is this about? Well, if you know a little bit about JSRs, and who really knows about JSRs, turns out that JSR 269 is Java annotation processing, and JSR 330 is at inject. So this is a talk about using Java annotation processing for dependency injection, which is Dagger. So we could rename this to dependency injection with Dagger. That's a better title, like at least people understand. But it's not very fun. So one example would be, that's my opinion, that the next one is fun, you might not agree, is like Sharper, Better, Faster, Dagger, which was a talk that John and I gave, and it's a reference to Daft Punk, it's the name of, I think, an album that Daft Punk made like a long time ago. So that was the real title of the talk we gave about Dagger, and that was actually the front slide. Yeah. That was pretty great. I'm pretty proud of that one, to be honest. All right. So let's get back to serious business. Copyright slides. I haven't actually, I used to see this a lot like 5 years ago, not anymore. I think people understand that it's useless and nobody wants it. Oh wow, okay. I pressed another button. Okay, we're back. I just gained back 6 minutes, right? Like the counter is back at 0. Anyway, so the other slide, that's something very, very interesting. Why do we have this here? Because I know a lot of us tend to put like some sort of description of like, this is my job and this is what I've done. Why do we do that? It's because we want to establish credibility. We want people in the room to know that we're not just a random person like walking on stage and we know about the subject. So there are other ways to do that. One of the ways to do that is to just tell a story of how you came to know about the subject. And that's exactly what I did today when I told you that I'm organizing internal engineering events and I'm giving feedback to speakers. And you all have this story. In fact, most of you just do it naturally when you start your talks. But if you find yourself having like an author slide, think about removing it and what you could say to establish your credibility. Also, people are in the room already and they're unlikely to leave. So you don't really need to establish credibility. You can just go for it. All right. This slide is definitely the best one. There is too much content. It's distracting. I think that's pretty obvious. what's happening here, and it's even happening right now, is that when you see this, you start reading it, and you're just not paying attention to whatever the person is saying. So why did the speaker do that? Why did they put all this content on the screen? It's because they were scared. I mean, I don't know, I didn't talk to them actually, but I think they were scared that they would forget some of the important things that they had to say. So they put it all up there to make sure they would go through every single point and not forget anything. They're prioritizing their self-comfort over just delivering a good talk and over the audience. So it's kind of selfish, but it's actually very inefficient anyway. So we shouldn't do that, because our goal is to teach, and that's not helping with that. All right, so we touched a bit on what we're going to talk about today. Let's take a little bit of a step back and ask that question. Why are we giving tech talks? Like, what's the point? Why am I being here today? Why life? No, we're not going to go as far. Overall, I think you'll agree with me that the goal of a tech talk is simply to teach people and to transmit knowledge, right? Like, you have some concept and ideas and knowledge in your head, and you want it to be in other people's head. The goal is not to be a rock star, to have people love you. If you're into that, maybe you should do music or other things, but that's not why we're here. So it's to transmit knowledge, like the Matrix. Unfortunately, we can't do that. We can't just like plug in a cable and learn from that. Learning is hard. So we can just show the content. So how do we do that? We want to transmit knowledge. There are like 3 key ideas, and they're pretty, again, obvious, but maybe saying them will help. The first one is that, well, I guess I'm not really good at this button thing. I won't teach you how to use that today. The first one is to keep the audience engaged. And so it's basically, you want people to pay attention to what you're saying and to be interested in what you're saying, and it cannot be just about the content. The content, what you're trying to teach is important. If the subject is boring, people will not pay attention anyway. But once you have the right subject and content, you also need to pay attention to how you're going to create that talk and deliver it, and that's a huge part of it. And that's how people will remember it. So that's the first thing, engage the audience. The second thing, and that's going to come back when you start building the talk. I'm really terrible on this, I'm sorry. Focusing the content, reducing the content, trying to, this is supposed to be a diamond in some sort of thing, but it's basically extracting the core ideas. Like, what do I want people? I'm going to teach them about all of these things. Maybe I'll cover a huge API. But at the end of the day, what is the important thing that they need to remember when they leave? You can't expect them to remember everything. So think about the 1, 2, 3 most important things. There's also some, you might have done information theory before and learned that, like, over a communication channel, there's a limited amount of information that can flow. This is a communication channel. If you want to pass some information, you should reduce the content so that you can add redundancy. It's coming back. Repeat again and again and again. Not to the point where it's annoying, but if you have 1 or 2 key messages, try to repeat them throughout, because that's how people are going to remember what you're trying to say. And we've all been to school. We all know that basically we have to read that same thing again and again and again until we remember it. So that's the third point, repeat, which I just did, right? I'm repeating it a little bit. And the final point, I guess, not the final, but a very, very important point, is to come prepared. So there's a thing that we like to, a game that we like to play in the speaker community. It's basically, I haven't prepared. I'm writing my slides last minute. We all do that. Like, oh yeah, I just like, it's not finished. It's fine. That's not true at all. It's just a lie that we pretend. Because in fact, even if you're doing it last minute, usually you're still preparing and thinking about it a lot. So that's how you create a good talk. Coming prepared does not mean writing down everything that you're going to say and learning that by heart. In fact, that's something that I think only Steve Jobs can pull, because he had a lot of time on his hands, maybe. but other people can pull that off. But I think that first of all, it takes a lot of time to learn something by heart. Second of all, we're not actors. We can't. I mean, I am definitely not an actor, and so it's really hard to perform well over and over again. And it turns out that if you practice, like if you learn something by heart and try practicing it, you're gonna speak like a robot, and it's very annoying to listen to someone who is reading their thing or has learned them by heart, because your voice is not the same. And you'll notice, try when you watch talks, try paying attention to the pitch and the voice of the person, and you'll see that there are people who are reading, and that happens. There are people who also know their content, but to the dot, and then either they worked a lot and it flows well, or they did it a couple times, and then it's kind of weird, and you can't, it's like hard to focus. And so that's more of a personal thing. I like to work on the content, but I don't like to rehearse, and I don't like to script what I'm going to say too much. All right, so next thing, the audience is giving you, and you are all like here giving me time and attention. This is valuable time. Florina just told me that a couple minutes ago. She said, I'm going to come to your talk, but it better be good because I don't want to waste my time. Talk about pressure. Thank you. Sorry, I had to. So when you're up here, you have an impact on everybody's, all the people who are in front of you. You can, in a small way, change their life, right? You're trying to teach them something. They're going to use that later. So try to be mindful of that. So let's dig into the specific details. How do you pick a subject talk? How do you prepare a talk? So the first thing is you pick a subject. And so that by organizing this monthly event, it's really something that I realized. I would talk to engineers all the time because I'm looking for people to speak. And I'm like, hey, do you want to speak at this thing? And the answer is, I don't have anything interesting to say. I'm a new grad. I just started. I've only been here 1 month. I've only been here 1 year. It's always the same excuse of, and it might not be your case, but I often hear that excuse of, I don't have anything interesting to say. And that is just imposter syndrome. And it's not true. We're all unique in our own way. And more importantly, we all know something that someone else doesn't know. And just think about what you just learned. Well, if you just learned that, someone else probably doesn't know about this thing, right? So the way I like to discover just topics, I just look at when I'm speaking with my colleagues, what I'm excited about. Did you know that API 19 had this thing and that thing? Right, that's pretty cool, right? And I'm realizing, maybe that could be like a lightning talk, like a 5-minute talk, or maybe there's a deeper subject here. So if you start doing that, if you start writing down the things you're excited about, the thing you talk to other people about, or the things, put simply, that you want to know more about, a little bit of it, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to start learning more about this, and then I'm going to talk about it. Just imposter syndrome. Similarly, I've seen a lot of really good talks today, so I could have been like, I probably shouldn't talk about giving a talk at droidCon. They're already really good, all the speakers. Like, why should I give that talk? Why shouldn't be maybe Jake or Christina, right? And so I just ignored that voice in my head and, just applied. So we have a subject. So what's the next step? What happens if the next step is to start writing slides? You usually end up with this. And that's because generally, slide tools are not they're too constrained and they're not really great for starting to build a presentation. The next step, it's vacation. It's going back, vacation. Collect, this is me in Spain. Yeah, it's just weird, but I had this picture. And so it turns out this is real, because when I first wrote this talk, I was like with my phone writing things down right there. So that's when I started forming, and I started reading about the subject more. There's like some books about how the TED speakers create their talks. And so you read more about the subject matter and you give it time. And as ideas pop up, you write them down. John just told me that he has a little paper next to his bed, and like he wakes up, writes some things down, and go back to bed, right? And that's great. That we should do that. I just write in like Evernote, but so what I do is that I write everything down as sort of an indented list. That's just my way. I know some people do mind maps. There's plenty of ways, but you want some sort of way. Actually, paper is probably better than even just digital for this. And you want to collect every single idea you have. There's no bad idea, because this isn't the talk. This is ideas and like things that you want to research. And then you start identifying the cool ideas, the important ideas. What's really cool about this is, if for the same subject you're asked to give a lightning talk and then later like a bigger talk, you can come back to this and add more content from that. And then the other thing that's really cool is that when you're done and you're like, I think I'm done, I have like a plan, I have everything, you can go back to the list and see, did I forget anything? So I always start with that. So the next step is to identify those core ideas, those diamonds, the thing that you want to give to people, and start building around them, right? Like I probably should start with this, then I'm going to talk about that, then I'm going to talk about this. And then, so that's a plan, and you sort of write an outline. And as you have these ideas, one thing that's very important is to think about adding content, and more specifically, adding stories. So this is something that's pretty interesting, and I still don't know exactly how to use it best. But since we're kids, we're like used to listen to stories. When someone says, you know, I went there, I did that, people pay attention to. There's a way you phrase things when you say a story, and people are really paying attention to that. And so stories are a great way to capture the audience's attention, but more importantly, adding emotions to those stories really helps with remembering them. For example, here, when I told you the story of that speaker, I also mentioned how there was a tweet wall and it was terrible, and I never want to be in that situation. I'm still like having like, oh, this is terrible, you know. For me, it's emotionally strong, and I hope it is at least a little bit for you as well. And what that does is you're going to remember that. At least I'm hoping. Another thing that as humans that we have is that we remember negative emotions better than positive emotions. It's kind of sad, but that's how it is. So you can use that. Don't do it too much, so you don't want to leave your audience like really sad. But like everybody's depressed at the end of your talk. I don't think that's a great outcome. But you should think about using that. And so as you make your plan, think about the stories you have around that subject and how you could pepper them through to kind of keep the audience engaged throughout. So once I have a plan, I make sure that I have the key concepts, and then I start introducing redundancy, repeating some of the ideas throughout to make sure that they are remembered. All right. So now we have some of a plan. So what's the next step? Writing slides. And that's the most, I guess, controversial one. So what is a slide deck? To me, it's a tool. It's not a hammer, it's a tool. It is, and what is a tool? A tool is an extension of your body. And the reason I'm saying it's that, it's because I want to be very clear. You, as a speaker, you are giving the presentation. The tool, the hammer, is not giving the presentation, right? You are the delivery device. So here, Christina is giving the presentation, right? Her job is to deliver that content. The slide is just part of the content, and it's a tool to help deliver the key ideas, but it's not there by itself doing the work of the presenter. And that's very important. It sounds obvious, but that's a point that we often forget. Focusing is hard, especially with newer generations. It's like everybody's looking at their phone, their laptop. I see you, Florina. Sorry, again, I had to. No, the thing is, we really have a short attention span, and it's hard to focus. And so when you get people to pay attention to you, don't waste that. Don't waste that away. It's not like the Matrix. Or actually, once you capture the attention of the people, it's kind of like the Matrix. You have this sort of virtual connection to them, and you can use to like shove information into their face, and they don't even realize it. What's an example of wasting that connection? This, right? This is a great way to lose everybody's focus, and they're going to start reading the slide, and they're going to stop paying attention to what you're saying. There is a name for this thing, this monstrosity. It's called an info deck. And an info deck is a slide deck that is meant to be consumed standalone. So one way for you to think, have I done the right thing with my slide deck to kind of check is, can someone understand what I'm talking about and get my points without me speaking over my slide deck? If the answer is yes, you might want to rework the slide deck because it has too much information. Now, I know that's controversial. I also know that people like to publish their slides online, and so that they can be consumed standalone. In fact, it's funny, when I was giving my talks and someone asked me, can you publish it online? So I did it, and then someone else told me, but why are you publishing this? That's completely useless. And I was like, well, I don't know, someone wants it, I'll give it to them, but yeah, that's the point. So I think, you can do what you want. My opinion here is that you should either do two decks, one with more information and one with less. Or maybe your content speaks for itself, but I generally doubt it. Or another way to do it is to use the speaker notes and write what you want to say in the speaker notes and then publish that. So you have the slide and the speaker note, and people can just read that. So let's talk about one of my pet peeves, bullet points. I hate bullet points. They make me angry every time I see them. So what can we do about bullet points? So let's come back to an example slide. So here I made a slide, and these are the things that I want to say, like, oh, people pay more attention to your message when they're engaged, blah, blah, blah. Don't overwhelm them with unrelated stuff. So you start reading this, you're already losing focus, you're not paying attention to what I'm saying. So the first rule is don't write full sentences. You can just, summarize what you're trying to say, right? So here, just 3 points. The text is too small. Now that I have less words, I can make it bigger, right? Now that's better. So I gave this talk early, and a new grad came to me, and she told me, my slides are so much better, and I spend so much less time now because I used to spend a lot of time trying to make the words fit on the screen. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought, someone would do that. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So less words, it's easier, you can make it bigger. We don't need bullet points here. We can remove them. It's still the same. Now that we don't have sentences, it's still pretty clear what's going on. And then the next thing is introduce the points one at a time. So you start from empty, right? And then you introduce 1, 2, and you can use transparency to highlight those, as you can see here. And then 3. Yep. And so that's cool. So how do you do that? Here is an example with Keynote. What I'm doing here is I first wrote my slide, and then I'm duplicating it, which is Command D on a Mac. I can't see what's going on here. Okay. And then I'm going back and basically removing the sentences and also changing the transparency to 50%. So you start from the end step, and then you just work backwards, and that way it just looks like you want it to look. I'm using Keynote. Again, you can use whatever you want. I used to be really excited about tools where you could write code and it would generate slides for you. These tools, they're really, really good at making bullet points. So I stopped using them. Keynote is pretty nice because it's really good at animations, and not just that it can do complex animations, but mostly that, and I'll show you a few of these things, it's mostly that it can make really beautiful animations really fast without a lot of work. And I'm lazy, so I really like when I don't have to work for it. So what's the right number of bullet points? Yes, 0, somewhere along 0. Another way to sort of get rid of those is to take them. So it's okay. Start your slides, write bullet points, then take all of these bullet points and put them in presenter notes. And then replace that empty slide with something else. For example, turn each bullet point into one slide with maybe just a picture, like here. transmit knowledge. We want to transmit knowledge, and so we're going to need to engage the audience and focus the content and identify the core concepts and maybe repeat the ideas, right? It's just a bottle, but it felt like someone was clapping, so I'm getting excited. Moving on. So when the other thing that's interesting to note is that a text doesn't leave a lasting impression. Tiger, now we're talking, right? And you remember pictures better than words. So pictures are pretty great. However, not like this. Do not do that. So this is exciting. What's going on here? There's this unexpected GIF of someone dancing in school, and there's some text here, and you're trying to read it, and I'm also speaking at the same time. It's not great. So GIFs and animations in general. Well, so two things are going on here. There's text and a picture behind it, which it's hard to read text with like pictures behind, and then there's the fact that it's moving. So all of that combined means that you're going to be looking at this. Maybe not right here because I'm telling you, but in general, you'd be looking at this rather than me. And I guess the only way I could capture your attention back would maybe, But I'm not going to do that. So what do you do? So, yes, freeze. So here's the thing. Why do we put GIFs in talks? I'm not saying GIFs are bad, by the way. It's just about how you use them. So the reason we like to have GIFs in our talks is because they're funny. You put a cat GIF and everybody's laughing for some reason. It can't really be explained well, but it just happens. So funny is good because funny is entertainment. It keeps the audience engaged. People pay attention to what you're saying. But once you've introduced the GIF and make people laugh, freeze it, just like this. And then their attention, I can guarantee you, is going to focus back on you. But do not speak while something is moving. Because again, we're humans and we pay attention to things that move. We pay attention to vision more than sound, more than audio, so be mindful of that. Humor is good. However, do not use scripted jokes. The story of two guys that get into a bar, no. No, first of all, you might not have the same sense of humor as everybody in the room, and you might say something that might be maybe shocking to other people, so you don't want to alienate your audience. But the second thing is, it's really hard to deliver a joke, and I don't know how to do it, and some people do, but you have, you have some good chance that it's just going to be like silence, and you're going to want to, go back into the space right here. So avoid scripted jokes. If you have something that is really important to say, you want to talk about a key idea, what do? You can tell a joke, but no, the thing that you do is you use a blank slide, like this. And you take your time and you pause for dramatic effect, right? But most importantly, the thing with the blank slide, it's magical. Try it once and you'll be amazed. As soon as you put something like this here, you can use the square logo. The square logo is great, by the way. As soon as you put something like this here, the audience immediately focuses back on you because there's nothing going on here. What else are they? Well, maybe they're looking at their phones and it's kind of sad. But otherwise, they would be looking at you. So. But then the question is, well, if there's nothing on the screen, how do I know what to say? You might have noticed I have like 10 of these like green screens. Speaker notes, right? This is how you do it. Yes, we still have a few slides to look at. Speaking about slide count, sorry. So you'll also notice that the notes are just short sentences, not sentences, but actual notes, right? Because you don't want to be reading your entire notes. You just want keywords that you remember, and that's probably even too long. Speaking about slide count, I promise you, there's not that many slides left. How many slides? What's the right slide count? Okay, cool. A couple minutes left. I guess that wasn't the right slide count. So the right slide count, there's none. It doesn't matter. I've seen great presentations with 1 slide in 1 hour and 300 slides in 30 minutes, and they both work great. All right, so we haven't really talked about Tech Talks yet. Let's look at some code. Can you tell what's going on? No, you can't. You need syntax highlighting. That's great, but you still can't figure out what's going on. So we need less content, and we need to make the font bigger. One thing that's an important takeaway as well, the code on the screen, it doesn't have to compile, okay? It's okay, you don't need imports, you don't need the whole thing, right? So how do you put styling, how do you style your code? One of the ways to do that, if you're using Keynote or things that were in which you can copy with style, you can actually copy from IntelliJ, and it keeps the style. And what's pretty great about it is that you can have a custom color scheme. So I have one with like font size 40. So when I copy, it's already like the right size. Then how do you help people focus on what you're saying? You're saying there are many ways to do that. One of them is to copy the code and then duplicate the slide a bunch of times and then gray out what you don't want to focus on. And then when you move through the slides, it just looks like you're highlighting the different parts that you want to talk about. But there is another way, and I think there's a trademark on it. It's like the Jake Wharton animation style. It's kind of to show off how you're really good at Keynote. And it does something like this, right? It's like appearing code with like brackets moving. Let's do it again because it's pretty cool. It's like so it's going down and then it's like fading in, right? That's really cool. It must be really hard, right, to do that. Jake talked about that. He basically explained. Create a final result, duplicate backwards, delete stuff, magic move. So there's a mandatory GIF here. You know what's coming. Magic. So let's see how that works. So the only thing we have to do, so first trick, add letters next to the brackets so that Keynote can identify them and keep track of them, and then make them transparent so that no one sees them. And that's how Keynote is going to be able to know, oh, I need to keep these things sort of line. And then you duplicate the slide, you remove the content, and you change the slide animation to magic move, and you use by character. That's very important, and that's how things are going to move. As you can see, I'm going to click preview, and it just moves nicely. Magic move is magic, and it works for almost everything. So I always build the last slide. I just learned that from Jake, and then I move things around in the next or the previous slides, and it just magically figures out. So let's talk about another thing that is related to Tech Talks, and it's live coding, right? So we love live coding, and you all know what's very likely to happen when you do a live coding. It's this. Things are going to break. The demo effect, the famous demo effect. The thing about the demo effect is that it's not just bad luck. You're setting yourself up when you try to do a live demo. Think about pair programming. We talk about pair programming and we say there's the person driving with the keyboard, the person with the keyboard who's typing, and the person behind who's driving. They're the brain. If you're typing, you can't be driving. Who's the brain? Okay, I have 2 minutes left. So it's hard to focus and speak at the same time. There are solutions to that. One of them, bring someone on stage. Someone's speaking, someone's coding, everything's fine. If you're alone, like myself right here, it's pretty sad. Sorry, it's just a bad joke. You can pre-record your demo and then just show that. That's what I did with Keynote. You look less, you're not as cool of a ninja as if you're live coding, but at least you're not going to do any mistakes and it's going to look great and people are going to take something away from that. So to conclude, important takeaways. Come prepared, it's work, but you don't need to rehearse, and it could actually go bad if you rehearse and script too much. If you want to transmit knowledge, you need to engage with the audience and identify the key concept and repeat until it gets in. The slides are tools, and you're in charge of delivering. Resume? Nope, we don't want that. And then be careful with GIFs. They're great, but think about when you're speaking or not. And with all these advices, I expect that you will give great presentation, and I expect to see you someday, maybe at Google I/O. Thank you.